2 total runs in 2 games isn't going to get it done, and the Giants get swept in this little 2-game series in LA. They lose last night 9-1. So we'll talk about the state of the team and look ahead to the upcoming homestand next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspic, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites, Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off $500. Use code LOCKEDON at checkout. And coming up on today's show, man, what a forgettable series for the Giants in LA. They lose last night 9-1. They scored 2 total runs in the series. And of course, you're not going to win a lot of games when you're averaging 1 run a game, and not just averaging. They scored 1 run in each of the 2 games. So in a lot of ways, you chalk it up to the fact that the Giants are so banged up right now with normal injuries and with the COVID IL stuff. But also the Dodgers just pitched extremely well in this series. Giants got a couple of solid starts out of Alex Wood and Carlos Rodon, but really it was the offense that was the issue. And yeah, okay, give credit to the Dodgers pitching, but we cover the Giants here and we're focused on what the Giants are doing. And what the Giants are doing is that they've been about league average offensively now on the season with a 102 weighted runs created plus. It is important to keep in mind that league offense is down. And I think more and more on this show, and I want to talk about it a little bit today, the baseball is coming into play. It's clearly behaving differently than it has in recent seasons. And this kind of ticks me off because the league just goes around changing the baseball year to year, and you don't know what you're going to get. And if you're building a roster, can you imagine? You don't know the type of run scoring environment the league is going to create with differences in the baseball. And so there's this whole saga about this, and it's honestly a little bit over my head when we start talking about the physics of the baseball and the drag coefficient and all that. And I don't really care to dive too deep into that conversation. But the reality is the ball's not traveling as far. And when we have barrels, which we talk about a lot on this show, it's a technical term now. It used to mean just squaring the ball up, but these days, technical term, barrel, means you hit the ball hard in the air, essentially. And barrels are traveling less distance, and I think we've seen that a ton with the Giants. We've seen it with everybody. The Dodgers in the first game of this series hit a bunch of balls that looked like they might be homers that were caught. Giants hit some themselves, and they've hit some all year. I don't think the Giants are especially hurt by this. I think it affects everybody, but it has certainly hurt the Giants. And if we look at the league average isolated power, just as an example, it's 138. And last year it was in the 170s. And so that number is down. If we look at the league average pitcher, they're only allowing 0.92 home runs per 9 innings. And if we look at the last few years, in 2019, the league average pitcher allowed 1.4 home runs per 9 innings. So almost 1.5 home runs every game, essentially, by the average pitcher. So that means 3 homers a game in the average game almost. But this year we're below 1. We're below 1 home run per 9 innings by the average pitcher. Even last year it was at 1.26. So we have seen a meaningful decline, and it certainly I know that a lot of people want to make the connection that the Giants were a team, they led the National League in home runs. They set a franchise record with 241 home runs, but I don't think they're an offense that if suddenly the ball isn't traveling quite as far that they're just going to crumble. I don't think that's necessarily what we're seeing here. And the Giants have hit 25 home runs, and that puts them in 10th place in the league. So they're still hitting more home runs than most teams, but the Giants' team isolated power right now is just 136, which is actually a few ticks below the league average. Or is it? The league average is, I don't even have it pulled up. The league average is 138. So it is just, like I said, a couple of ticks below that league average. So all of this, we're talking about all of this, but at the same time, the Giants are missing like 5 guys out of their lineup right now. Thankfully, Jock Pederson was able to return to the lineup for the first time since that second game against the A's, or was it the first game? Since the A's series, so he's missed some time. He didn't go on the IL. And then Mike Yastrzemski was finally able to come off the COVID IL last night, but neither of them really factored into the offense last night. And for me, it's like a timing thing, right? When you haven't played in so many days, it can take you a game or 2 or 5 to kind of get your rhythm back at the plate. And so it's great to have them back. It didn't pay immediate dividends, but it could in this upcoming series. And at the same time, those are just a couple of guys, and they're still missing Brandon Belt to the COVID IL. They're missing Tommy La Stella, which for me, every day that goes by, it becomes a bigger and bigger deal. I get the question, like, why am I so high on Tommy La Stella? I'm going to flip that back and say, why are you so high on Thairo Estrada? The guy has a 274 on base percentage. I like the way he plays. I like that he just goes out there, kind of provides value in all areas of the game. He's a good defender, good base runner, athletic, has some power, has some contact ability. I like his game, but at the same time, he's been below average offensively. I know the runs batted in, whatever, he leads the team. I don't really care about that. It kind of means that he's come up in a lot of opportunities with guys on base. It's not predictive of anything that he leads the team in runs batted in. I'm looking at the 274 on base percentage and saying you could definitely use an upgrade there, and you could use Tommy La Stella coming in and having a 340 on base percentage out of the second base position. It would just be a massive upgrade offensively if you can do that, and then you can use Estrada in better situations that put him in a position to succeed, and then I think you're in a much better place. So I've been talking about that all season long, and thankfully Tommy La Stella and Evan Longoria are in Sacramento, and they've begun rehab assignments, and Lamont Wade Jr. is another guy who's in Sacramento on a rehab assignment. I think he played his 6th or 7th game with the River Cats yesterday. We thought he might return yesterday, but he didn't. So I wonder if the knee is still not 100% feeling perfect and they just want to wait it out. We could possibly see him tonight. I'm not sure when we're going to see him back. So there's not necessarily any imminent returns except for La Stella, but it hurts to miss Belt. It's hurt to not have Longoria or La Stella. And I'm probably even forgetting somebody because there are so many guys who have been out or banged up or on the COVID IL or whatever the case is. So coming up in just a minute, we're going to turn the page a little bit. I just want to provide some illustrations as to why it's still too early to get super concerned and why we can't judge a team based on a couple of games. We're going to look at where the Giants stood last season in terms of their record and runs scored and run differential and all that at this point in the season, and also look at some of the top free agents because, you know, a lot of people are probably thinking, man, the Giants failed by not signing these top free agents. Well, we're going to see that a lot of those guys are struggling as well. So it's not necessarily true that if you just had signed these guys, you would be in a better place right now. So all of that in just a minute. But first, whether she prefers a statement piece or everyday subtle elegance, BlueNile.com has fine jewelry options for every mom. Shop high-quality classic diamond earrings, elegant tennis bracelets, or gemstone pendant necklaces. Looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing? BlueNile.com has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Mark Mother's Day with something enduring. Classic diamond stud earrings, elegant tennis bracelets, birthstone pendants, and so much more on BlueNile.com. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever from with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off $500. This podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day. Use code LOCKEDON, that's code LOCKEDON, plus every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, as promised, I want to take a look at this year versus last year and also look at some of the top free agents. I just think it's an important exercise. We are still very early in the season, and there's a lot of guys around the game who are struggling, and ultimately what people are doing on May 5th is not necessarily indicative of what they're going to do over the course of a season. The Giants, they're 14-10 with what? A plus. I want to make sure I'm looking at the right year here because I have last year pulled up as well, with a plus 24 run differential. By the way, the Cardinals, who are coming into town now, will get you set for that series a little bit later on, but they are also 14-10 with a plus 24 run differential. So talk about an evenly matched series right now. This is it. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. So yeah, when we look at this year versus last year, at this point last year through 24 games, the Giants did have a record that was one win better. They were 15-9 versus 14-10 this year. So let's just at first take a moment to really step back and think about that. Okay, a 107-win team was one win better at this point in the season. So I think that just tells you, don't panic about a 14-10 start at this point. I'm not saying it means they're going to win 106 games because they're only one game behind last year. But what I am saying is it's 14-10 doesn't doom you at all. And that's the thing about baseball is every day is a new opportunity and guys can come back. They can get into a rhythm. They've got the starting pitching that they should be able to get onto. They should be able to avoid long losing streaks. They have lost 5 out of 6 right now. But really, if you look at it, okay, so they're 1-6 or 1-5 in their last 6, but they're also 5-5 in their last 10 because they won the other 4. They went on an 8-3 road trip before the start of this little skid, and then they won that first game against the A's. So, you look at things in small samples and numbers can get weird, but you just take a step back and they're 14-10 plus 24 run differential. That run differential, by the way, continues to have an expected win-loss record of 15-9, so they're underperforming it by 1 win. Whereas last year, through 24 games, they had an expected win-loss record of 14-10 with a plus 20 run differential. So this year, their run differential through 24 games is actually 4 runs better. That being said, okay, so this year they've scored 111 runs through 24 games. Last year, they had scored 97 runs. So they've scored 14 more runs this year than they had last year in the same number of games. Important to point out, there's a designated hitter in the lineup this year, and there was a pitcher in the lineup last year. So that's going to hurt. That's obviously going to add some runs. But I think when we can actually look at some numbers that indicate how many runs you're kind of generating by the DH spot, and it's about a wash. And so overall, the offense is producing about the same number of runs per game when you adjust for the designated hitter. And last year they had allowed 77 runs, and this year they've allowed 87 runs. So believe it or not, the pitching was better last year, except again, the whole league had pitchers in the lineup, so the DH does change that. So I would say overall, the production in terms of pure runs allowed and runs scored is about the same when you adjust for the designated hitter. And that was a team that went on to win 107 games. And so again, I'm not saying it means this team is going to replicate that team in any way necessarily, but it does mean certainly it's not time to get overly concerned, and every day is a new opportunity to start a better streak and to stop a losing streak and to go on a little run. And I think this team is capable of that when they're more at full strength. And I just wouldn't be shocked at any point if they were to go out and do that. So let's talk about some of the top free agents. When we look at some of the top hitters, the main guys, I mean, when we look at average annual value, I'm just kind of sorting through this list by AAV. Carlos Correa got the top average annual value for position players at $35.1 million over 3 years, $35 million per year over 3 years. And on the season, he's been a little bit better than average. He's got a 323 on base percentage and a 385 slugging, a 121 isolated power. He has just 2 home runs, strikeout rate of over 26%. He's been okay, but not a real difference maker to this point in the season. Corey Seager comes in next on this list, and he's also been a tick above average with a 111 weighted runs created plus, 314 on base, 398 slugging. The expected numbers are better, meaning he's probably hit into some bad luck, but still, it's not like the difference between this production and then Brandon Crawford, for example, is adding multiple wins to a team. It's been basically a wash between the production of a Brandon Crawford, who has generally struggled, and the production of a Carlos Correa or a Corey Seager. It just speaks to, I'm not saying that for the rest of the year that's going to hold true, but so far it has, and that's kind of the weirdness of baseball. But also, Brandon Crawford had such a great season in 2021, so I am interested to see how it all ends up in 2022. How about Chris Bryant? I get the question all the time, why didn't the Giants, or in the offseason the question was, the Giants need to replace the missing bats of Chris Bryant and Buster Posey. Well, Chris Bryant, wasn't very good for the Giants and wasn't really a difference maker for them. And B, he gets this huge deal from the Rockies, 7 years, $182 million, for a guy who seemed to be in some decline, particularly defensively, but also with the bat a little bit. But he's played in 15 games for the Rockies. He's got an 88 weighted runs created plus. He has 0 home runs. The power has disappeared, and he's currently hurt. And so people say, why didn't you replace Chris Bryant? Well, they could have, for example, signed Chris Bryant, and they'd probably be in a worse position from a current talent perspective, but also from a long-term perspective, because that contract has the potential to end up very bad for the Colorado Rockies. But I'm just saying that signing one of these guys doesn't guarantee you that it's going to work out in the long term, but also in the short term. There are some guys who are producing well when we look at the top free agents, but there are plenty of guys who are not producing well. Trevor Story, a guy I wanted, a guy I believe in long term, but he's got a 79 weighted runs created plus up to the minute, 30% strikeout rate, on base percentage of just 300, isolated power of just 089. So he's been a non-factor for the Boston Red Sox, and the media in Boston, I've seen some of the tweets out there, they're upset about the state of the team, and they're already negative about the signing of Trevor Story because he hasn't produced. That's just how it goes. People are going to be negative, no matter what negative thing comes up, whether it's you didn't sign somebody and people are mad because you're not getting the production out of the guys who are in a spot where you could have signed somebody. But if you sign somebody and they're not producing, people are upset about that. And so we just choose to kind of try to take a level-headed approach to all the evaluation and look around the league, see that offense is down, see that the baseball has affected things significantly. And another guy who comes up here when I'm looking at the top free agents is Carlos Rodon. I also see it said the Giants didn't make a splash in free agency. Well, what about the guy who may end up winning the Cy Young Award? It's 5 starts, I get it, but he did finish 5th in the American League last year despite not playing much in the second half of the season. So Carlos Rodon has been a revelation and a great player for the San Francisco Giants, and they picked him up on a 2-year guarantee for him. It may only be 1 year, but for him, he's guaranteed 2 years if he wants it. So he's been a great addition. Plenty of guys, in addition to those I just mentioned, I think Kyle Schwarber and Starling Marte. No, Schwarber's been solid now, and Starling Marte has been below average. So it's just kind of hit or miss with a lot of these free agents. Seiya Suzuki has been good, but by wins above replacement, Jock Pederson has been even better. And so that just goes to show you that it shows you a lot of things. And most significantly, it shows you that we are still very early on in the 2022 season. So coming up next, we're going to get you set for the Cardinals and Rockies coming into town, specifically the Cardinals in this big 4-game series for the Giants to try to get back on track. So all of that in just a minute. But first, our next partner has a product I use literally every day. I started taking AG1 because I wanted to see what all the hype was about. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, immune system, energy recovery, focus, and aging. All of the things. It's lifestyle friendly as well, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, and it costs less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No more need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/MLB Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/MLB Network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all your sports betting stats and info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, and this weekend's run to the Roses as the Kentucky Derby is back. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, as promised, we are going to get you set for the Cardinals coming into town. Giants, like I said, 14-10, Cardinals 14-10, both with the same run differentials. The Giants have scored 10 more runs this year than the Cardinals, but they've allowed 10 more. So the run differential at +24 is exactly the same when all is said and done. Giants are just 6-5 at home. Cardinals are 7-5 on the road. I'm not sure how much, it's early, and so I wouldn't necessarily read into those numbers too much, but the Giants need to do better at home. They're 8-5 on the road and 6-5 at home. So you would expect that they would ultimately do better at home than on the road. So hopefully it begins with this homestand against the St. Louis Cardinals and Colorado Rockies. So when we look at the Cardinals, like I said, they're playing well as the Giants, generally speaking, have this year. And anytime they come into town these days, you have to worry about Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. Those guys have historically been lethal to the San Francisco Giants, have been villains for the San Francisco Giants, and hopefully they can contain them. But usually that's easier said than done. They're a very right-handed team. When I look through their team, they've only got a couple of lefties that generally crack their lineup. And the pitching that you're going to see is tough. I always say that these types of guys are not the guys you want to face when you're going through a little bit of a funk offensively, but it is Miles Michaelis tonight going for the Cardinals. And this is what I'm saying, the type of guy you don't want to see when you're struggling, because he's just a finesse guy. He's a pinpoint command kind of guy. He's not going to strike out a ton of people, but he is going to frustrate you with weak contact and just missing the barrel of the bat. And he's tough. And so he's got a 1.52 ERA, 2.89 fielding independent pitching. All the peripherals across the board look really good for Michaelis, despite a below league average strikeout rate. His walk rate is just 3.4%, so expect a lot of balls in the strike zone. We don't actually know yet who necessarily is going for the Giants. It could be a bullpen game. As far as I know, it could be Logan Webb. And so at this point in time, I don't know who's going to pitch for the Giants. But in this series, we're going to probably see a bullpen game at some point, maybe tonight, and we're going to see Logan Webb, Alex Cobb, and Carlos Rodon. And so it's a series where if you don't at least split, then things are really in a bad way because you've already lost 5 out of 6. And so if you lose 5 out of 6 and then you're home and you lose at least 3 out of 4, suddenly you're looking at a real funk. And so hopefully this is a series that the Giants can at least split against a good team, but preferably, obviously, take 3 out of 4 or better. So also for the Cardinals, you're going to see Jordan Hicks, who is a guy who throws 100 plus miles an hour, has been a reliever in the past, but now is in that St. Louis starting rotation. And he's tough, and he's another guy who doesn't necessarily get a ton of strikeouts despite the power stuff, but he gets a ton of ground balls and generally can miss the barrel a little bit, although he's been hit hard more so than Miles Michaelis. So obviously you're going to see a couple of other St. Louis pitchers in this series, but we will preview the games over the weekend tomorrow when we wrap up today's game. But you're probably going to see Michaelis, Hicks, Steven Matson, Dakota Hudson for the St. Louis Cardinals in this series. They've got some weaker bullpen arms, but they've also got some really good bullpen arms, including Ryan Helsley, who's out here throwing 103 miles an hour out of the pen in the late innings. Also, Giovanni Gallegos and Genesis Cabrera are pretty nasty in their own right. So if you can get to the bullpen early, I think you've got a pretty good shot. But if Michaelis can go like 6, then you could be in some trouble. So that's kind of the preview. Hopefully, 3 out of those 4 pitchers are right-handed. So hopefully Lamont Wade Jr. is able to come back and be in that lineup along with Jock Pederson and Mike Yastrzemski. It could mean that Luis Gonzalez gets sent out for Wade to be added. Yesterday, for Yastrzemski to be added, they did option Luke Williams. So we shall see. Giants are banged up, but hopefully getting healthy here and a homestand could perhaps get them back on the right track. So we will be back tomorrow getting you up to date with the rest of the pitching plans for the Giants over the weekend against the Cardinals and recapping tonight's game. It is a big game, in my opinion. Try to break the streak, improve to 15-10. That sounds a lot better than 14-11 to me. So thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Stay Locked On Giants.